Right. So, quick question to the tech people. Is it possible to increase the size of the slide on the previous screen a little bit? Like the current slide? Oh, yeah. Perfect. Right. So, yeah, and that's my call on the session that we had earlier. I think what we really should do is what I call bridge the gap. So we make sure that we have like an aligned product positioning between open source and commerce. Um, Also, with the marketplace, is what Ravi's going to touch on, that we have like an aligned vendor experience, how it just feels, and I think we can talk about this. So, is this what we are talking about right now is like, oh yeah. What we're talking about is right now the outcome from the roadmap session that we had with the lunch hour. So that's what we're focusing on. I just want to give the part. Okay, you're right. I completely forgot the context. Awesome. So we'll figure that out from my first few points. Sorry about that. So, another thing that came up during that session is that in the quality of the descriptions in the marketplace is like the greatest stuff. And there's guidelines in place, what you should do. I personally think that we should turn those into rules. You know, like you have to have like a little icon for it. You have to have more than 3 words on the description, because otherwise vendors have no clue what they're getting into, right? Yeah, moving on, in regards to SMB focus, I think that, I mean, we already see merchants coming like back from the SaaS platforms because they went through this whole hype and wrestling on the other side thing. However, I think in order to retain those merchants, we should improve the performance, make sure that hosting isn't like thousands of dollars per month, right? Because that's one of the reasons why people move over to the SaaS platform in the first place. Maybe we can cut back on making stuff like Elasticsearch like optional, right? So that they can run it on like a lower tier hosting platform, right? I also think that we should focus marketing efforts towards those merchants, because like we had the same discussion in Magento India like a week and a half back, where it's like e-commerce is no longer like a hype thing that you have to have. It's a commodity, it's necessary, it's mandatory. You have it anyway. So we should make sure that merchants are like address that thing. Say like, hey, we know you need to have this. We got you back. I understand the requirements. Yada yada yada. You think? There we go. Now, one of the discussions was about bringing a little bit of B2B back into Magento open source. I personally believe that we should still provide like a meaningful upgrade path towards new e-commerce. That's what I still believe that should be the case. And in terms of improving performance, we also have to improve performance like at scale. On a little tiny personal note, we do have a prototype, like a working prototype of the index I'm running, which does no longer scale exponentially, but linearly. So we have cases where we increase index of performance by, what was it, like 4,000%-ish? But it's like really freaking fast. So we will start like a little crowdfunding thing, because we need to finalize it and prepare it for release later on. So if you like index of performance is like one of your pain points, hit me up. Special thank you to Elon, who like put a tremendous amount of work in there. Final point is in terms of marketing and visibility, I think we should be bolder in terms of the community. We're a very tech-driven community, very developer-driven community, and there's mostly only like one accurate answer. And a lot of the things that marketing does is work with feelings and assumptions and, and stuff like that. So if somebody says like our checkout has like 78% better conversion rates, then what? It's like me saying Magento stores convert with 2.5% more love than the next leading brand, right? So let's see, we can play that game, and we should, because that changes, so we don't always have to be like super correct with stuff. We can also play with feelings, I think we should do that. Other things we're trying to get back is there's something like an ROI calculator because merchants just move lot of moving favors around and then see numbers change. Better cards is a big one. So that's easier if the merchant has like a set of options. If you're confronted with that you can just pull up the coding battle card and go like, these are the pros and cons of the different systems, and come up with a good recommendation. This one's going to be pretty unpopular, I guess, but I also think that we shouldn't use Magento as a silver bullet for any requirement. Right? We have to be honest with the merchant. If it's like a super tiny shop, it might not be necessary to fire up a Magento install in the first place. So that works. And what I touched on earlier, showcases. I think showcases are important, and we shouldn't just go, like I said earlier, just highlight those like space shuttle level projects, because that will alienate smaller merchants because they will think, hey, this is not for me, it's for me, right? So that's my thoughts. Rejection.
Okay. All right, why don't you get to the next slide? Are you saying, Mr. Clicker? There you go. Okay. Well, first of all, I just want to say, you know now why Matthias is the executive director. He just went straight into everything and action, and so many bullets, which is great, right? I'll get there with I only have 2 bullets really to talk about, but I just want to say this session that we're sort of reporting on was the first, I think, at least of its kind ever since I've been involved. And it was interesting, right? We had a lot of different viewpoints, a lot of different thoughts. I thought it was a very productive conversation, right? I mean, there was not agreement, obviously, but there was not hostility, right? And I think that's the way that we're going to be able to identify things and move forward. So I definitely appreciate everyone who took the time, who contributed ahead of time to sort of the agenda that we shared and the ideas that came forth. That being said, I think, Matthias, you hit on this a little bit, but I think one of the things that was super important to me, and it was really clear, right? Like the Adobe Commerce Marketplace, there's opportunity areas there. I mean, we run the marketplace, but sometimes it's like proofreading your own essay, right? It looks fine, and then someone else comes up, but, and it's like, oh, yeah, actually, there's things there. And so I think there's definitely an opportunity to look at how it's positioned and what the goal of that marketplace is. I mean, just think about it for one example, like for any iPhone holders out there, when you think about downloading an app for your iPhone, you go to the App Store, the Apple App Store, and nowhere else, right? When you think about getting an extension for your Magento platform, there's many places that you can go to pull that extension down, right? And so I think as a group, we have to determine what is the role of this marketplace that we have, and do we want it to be the destination? Do we want it to be the place that people discover stuff, or do we not? And I think once we get clear on that type of stuff, we'll better be able to deliver the right marketplace or not, and key in on some of the goals and objectives there. The second thing I want to touch upon is the positioning of Magento, right? And amongst this community, there's always been the conversation around Magento versus Adobe Commerce, right? And that dialogue will continue, and because we're so closely embedded, it should continue. That being said, as I touched upon earlier today in the morning, I think it's a crucial time for us to consider how Magento positions itself against some of the other e-commerce platforms as well, and how we all come together in order to try and figure out, when it's right, when it's not right. And you gave an example of, maybe someone's too small and Magento is not the right tool for them. It's, and that's perfectly fine. But I think that was very, over the last few weeks, that has been that top of mind for me, is to understand as a group, as a community, as Magento open source and Adobe Commerce, how do we actually position, strengthen our brand globally, and really compete well against some of the other e-commerce players who are sort of coming and looking at opportunities as we try to figure that stuff out. So those are 2 areas that were super important to me.
You tell me what you think. No.
I like it. All right, so most of the conversations were around marketplace and why I choose on the agenda. But the agenda item that was from my side and that I rallied for, and I think is the most important, is around this quote, that I live by and I read every day. It's so simple to be difficult and very difficult to be simple. And why am I talking about that? Why? Because I think that the brands are feeling the pain and we need to make things simpler for them. And allow me to explain how. So this is a typical, on the left side is the architecture for guys like Ivan, all the technical people like Jacob and all. And on the right side is for guys like me, which is very simpler diagram. So Magento comprises of these components. Magento framework, which is the base. On top of it, we have Magento core modules. So Magento open source is 350 modules roughly. And Adobe Commerce is around 480, 490 modules. On top of it, there are extensions from the marketplace that we're talking about, that we 4,000 of them right now, right, from various providers. And then there are SaaS applications like the Dot Digital and the Avlar world. They use the API and they sit outside. So now, why are the brands feeling pain? Because these extensions are sitting on top of the core module, the core Magento framework. On an average, there are 70 to 80 extensions that are available on a Magento instance. And I'm talking about a brand doing just a few $1 million in GMV, right? And they are from 7 to 8 different providers. In a Magento instance, at any given point of time, there are 7 to 8 different cooks in the kitchen, right? The licensing of these extensions is very complicated. So right now, the way they are sold are, let's say, $X for the initial license. Then it is 2X for Adobe Commerce, and some extension provider charge 2.5X for Commerce Cloud, Adobe Commerce Cloud. And then after that, after 30 days of using that extension, if you want new versions of the product mainly, or if you want the support and maintenance, then you have to pay on an average per year 0.5, like 50% of that cost. So 0.5X for open source or X for Adobe Commerce. That is fairly complicated. 3 different price tiers on 3 different editions, initial licensing and then recurring. That's too complicated. It's too complicated. Plus, think of it that there are out of these 70 extensions, let's say 50 are paid. That means there are 50 subscriptions on different timelines, on different credit cards, one when we bought, one people were bought, right? How's it? And people come and go. The buying experience is super difficult. It is just like B2C. These extensions belong to the brand, belong to the website, belong to the customer. So it is impossible. I mean, just ask yourself, how is it possible for a brand to do business on a Magento platform and manage this 50 subscription when we are already living in a world of subscription country? Right? It's simply impossible, right? Now, what is the side effect of it? So in my example, these lines are, let's say, these lines are 10 stores. And these 10 stores are on the same version of Magento, which is 2.4.7. If you can see, the left one on Magento, 2.4.7. And then they have the same extensions, let's say, 10 of them, right? So ideally, their footprint should be the same. Their footprint should be the same, right? But what ends up happening is because managing the subscription is super impossible. So what the devs or the agencies end up doing is that they upgrade the Magento. They're upgrading the base without upgrading what is sitting on top of that. How is it going to be done? So now each with the same number of extensions, same version of Magento, the footprint of that Magento instance can still be different. Can be all over the place. Just imagine with 70 extensions, how many combinations are possible. As a result, there is a huge friction between these extensions, cost of maintenance increases, there is not efficiency, and there is a heavy cost of maintenance, right? So that's the pain that people are facing. Now, what's the solution? How can we solve this? First thing is we need to, as a prerequisite, simplify the licensing part of it, right? So that's why on HeadWorks, we launched simple licensing
So no matter what edition of Magento you are on, you will pay $X per year. That's it, as simple as. So we reduce the pricing for Adobe Comps. And to be honest, all these extensions, 99.9% of the time, are the same code. So why there should be different pricing tiers based on the edition of the product? Right? There is none. It should be based on usage and the community needs to evolve it. But if we make that licensing simple, now that is something that we can do. Fireworks have done that, Masti should do it, Mage Plaza should do it, everybody should do it. Then all these extensions are centrally housed at marketplace. We need to have that central authority, and which is that authority? That's the marketplace. And that's the change we are requesting Adobe to make. If we make that as one bill, so that means if you are on open source, cost of your license for the platform is $0. You have 50 extensions, you pay $200 a month. It's one bill, right? That's it. If we can introduce that change, if you're on Adobe Commerce Cloud, you get Adobe Commerce Cloud licensing, and you get extensions, one bill. So now, when we will introduce this change, then the ease of doing business and maintaining these extensions will be there. So when you do setup upgrade or composer upgrade, whatever technical thing that we do, so from the composer, Magento latest, let's say 2.7, 2.4.7 version will be pulled, and the respective extension that is compatible with that version will be pulled and installed. So this should be the how the footprint of Magento should look like. So if I'm on 2.4.7, all the extensions should be in the same line and in alignment with the 2.4.7. To me, this change will really help brands do business with Magento as a platform. And I talk about it in much more detail. There's much more detailed plan that we have in place. But you can scan this barcode I set down, Brent, and we talk about that. So if you want to listen to it in detail, and that is pretty much it. The homework is done. Now it's playtime, so we will have dinner by the pool at 6:30.